Hey, Emily, really quick,
Hello.
before we get this episode started, give me a rapid fire update on how your writing life is going.
Slow, uninspired at times, but could be better. And I did write some yesterday.
Oh,
What about
that's
you?
exciting. Got my edits back. I'm dying. I have 2 weeks. So let's not talk about it and let's just start this episode.
Perfect. Hi, I'm Emily, author of the Xeris Galaxy Saga, among other things.
And I'm Kristen Crum, author of the YA rom-com It Happened at Christmas, among other things.
We're excited to welcome you to The Margins, a podcast where we have candid conversations about the writing life, indie and traditional publishing, the book industry, and more.
And today's candid conversation topic is where to get started as a writer.
Okay, so this topic actually comes from my mom.
Who is amazing. If you have never met Mama Connie, you are missing out.
But so she has always been a huge reader. I mean, I feel like that's where her and my father both, but it's where I get my love of books, especially science fiction and fantasy. We read a lot when I was a kid in those genres, and she's always loved that and always been a big reader in it. And so when we started, me doing a little bit more of the writing and everything, she was doing editing for her work, which was more of like, we're talking like the United States Forest Service. So not like creative writing, just like, report writing or whatever. And I would finish a book and give it to her, and she would read it and then do edits on it for me. And that has always been so helpful. But she's also tried her hand, and I don't know anything about what the story is about, but she's tried her hand at writing a little bit, but came to us to ask, like, where do you get started if you are just like completely new and have no idea? Now, obviously, she's a reader, but that doesn't always, it does help completely with writing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you know exactly what to do. So we have 7 things, and I'm not saying that you have to do all of these things in order. I kind of tried to put them in like a logical order so we could walk through them a little bit with our advice on each of those aspects, just to be able to have something for you guys to like take and walk away with to say, okay, I want to start writing a book. This is where I begin.
Yeah, so I think the first thing is you kind of have to have a story idea or characters or something that you want to write about, right? But we really want to encourage you to hone down, narrow in on a genre. Not necessarily when you're starting out. When you're starting out, I feel like it's really important to write whatever you want to write, kind of hone your voice, figure out a little bit what you're doing, what this writing thing is. But when you're ready to get serious about, okay, I want to do this thing, I want to have a book published, I think that's when you really need to narrow down on genre and figuring out exactly how to market what you're going to be writing. Because whether you're going to go traditionally published or indie published, you're going to have to market your book. You're going to have to talk about it. You're going to have to sell your book idea to your agent. That agent's going to have to take your words and sell them to a publisher. And then even after the book is published, you're still going to be selling your book because you have the social media posts, you have, what you write in newsletters. You're going to be meeting readers at book events, at book signings, and they're going to be like, oh, this is interesting. What's this book about? And, looking at them with blank eyes and being like, I wrote it, I don't know, it's good, just read it. It's not going to cut it when you're when you're working on trying to sell your book.
Yeah, and really, I was speaking with a group of girls a couple of weeks ago, and granted, these are like younger girls, but I really wanted to emphasize this because, and like Kristen says, I think it's so important to just write, have fun, write whatever you want. Think of maybe doing some short stories. You don't have to jump into a full novel, but to narrow in when you get to the point where you're like, okay, I think I've got a concept that to me seems like it would really hit the market well, or like it seems like another book that someone else would want to read. And you can like pick out a few books that are similar but not exactly the same. That I think puts you on the path to like, okay, I'm ready to maybe write this book toward like thinking about having it being published. And so when you consider the genre, it's going to be really helpful because I think there are a few reasons. I have judged several contests in the past. And I think what tends to happen is that newer writers just write whatever is in their mind, which is good. But they don't tend to think through, like you're saying, how would I market this to someone? How would I tell them about this? But also, where does it fit on a shelf in Barnes & Noble? Now, if you're going to indie publish, you can totally get away with more. So you could do a lot of genre bending and blending things together. Not a big deal. That's why I indie published my science fantasy, because it's hard to do. Yeah.
But you're still going to have to know how to market that book, whether you genre bend or mesh a bunch of things together, which is totally fine. Like, we're both all for it. Mm-hmm. Totally there for it. But you have to know how to talk about it.
Yeah, and just because it becomes so apparent that maybe a new writer doesn't understand, and I just like even saying this, but the conventions of a genre. My cat's tail just came into the camera. Welcome, Pages, to the podcast. So I don't know. There's room to break rules, but there's also conventions for a reason. And it really just depends on what your goals are. I don't think you have to have those up front when you're starting to write, but eventually if you get to the point where you're feeling more confident and you want to pursue publishing, you do have to think, what are my goals and who do I want to sell to? If it is a traditional publisher, having all these things kind of like loosely held in the back of your mind is going to be really helpful. If it's indie publishing, there is a little bit more freedom, but yet you still have to know them. So I know it seems like a lot up front, and so don't let that like bog you down. But I mainly wanted to put this like right up there at the beginning because I think it can actually help tell the story when you understand those types of stories that you're trying to tell, if that makes any sense.
And I think this is something that you are really, really good at when you are setting up your stories, is that you do kind of this groundwork before you start writing the stories. Like, you knew Suspended in the Stars was The Greatest Showman meets Star Wars before you even started working on the book, and that just helps so much when you're talking about it, because those are two very prominent things that when you say it, you know, people instantly know what you're talking about. However, I'm like vibes and wishes, and it doesn't. Which
is totally fine.
It's totally fine. It doesn't always work out great, and by the time that I hit the middle, I'm like, Emily, I need your help. I don't know how to pitch this book. I don't know what my hook is. I don't know what my, strong concept is. Help. So
you can do it both ways, I think is what we're saying.
You can. You can definitely do it both ways. Emily's way might be a little bit easier in the long run. Yes, you can copy me saying that.
Along with that, and this is, I'll put them under this like first point, because there really isn't, I don't think, a right or wrong way to do this. The next thing I would suggest within this is to consider like, okay, what is a plot? How do I plot if I want to plot? And like, what is point of view? Because that's another thing that I see a lot of new writers having no idea. Like, they might have been big readers, but they hadn't taken the chance to like sit back and think, oh, what is the book that I'm reading in? I just know what I like. So when you can, and I'm talking like maybe read a book or two. Like, I'm not saying go and read like 20 books. I remember when I felt like my plotting was like failing, I read Plot and Structure by James Scott Bell, and it's still a book that I always recommend. It is very simple, it is very easy to understand, and it gives you a basic framework. Does not mean you have to be a plotter to write. It just means that like that might be something you try out to see if you like it, and if you don't, just go right by the seat of your pants, and then you might have to revise to get it to that point.
I will say, like, we will drop a couple of our favorite books and resources kind of to help you get started in the show notes that will be over on Substack. So, head over there. We'll have that listed out. But also to that, I would like to speak into like those people that are like, oh my gosh, I don't know what POV is. I don't know what plot is. And your brain kind of shuts down, because that's kind of where I have been most of my author career. And if you love movies, if you love books, and you're a voracious reader, you're going to know these things. Like, you might not have like the correct labels on all of these, but you're going to know story, because
instinctively,
instinctively, you're just going to know it. So it's just a matter of like putting it in the right slots, labeling it correctly, which I still haven't figured out to do, and I'm like, what, 6 books in? I don't know. But so don't let the terms scare you off because
Mm-hmm.
they're not as scary as you think.
Yeah.
And like Emily said, like read it, take what, okay, this works for me,
Mm-hmm.
use it. What doesn't work, throw it out the window. Like it's not like
Mm-hmm.
a, here is save the cat and you have to do everything X, Y, and Z. And if you don't, then your book will flop. That no, like take
Mm-hmm.
what works and throw out the rest. I know
Yeah.
your
Oh, go
process
ahead.
is like, I was gonna say your process is like a couple of different
It's a
suggestions,
hybrid.
like yeah,
Mm-hmm.
like put together, mashed together,
Mm-hmm.
and so it becomes Emily's way. So yeah, just make it your own way.
Well, and I think the reason why I point out plot, because I know that it is such a I'm not going to say everyone has to plot. I don't believe
Hmm.
that. But I hear from new writers consistently of like, well, I wrote the beginning, I know where the end is, but I have no idea what to do in the middle. And that I've had a lot of people come to me and be like, what do I do? And so
I think I come
from
to you
that,
weekly. I think I come to you
what do I do?
weekly. Emily,
Well,
I'm stuck.
and that's where the hard thing is because to me the answer is as simple as like, well, understanding like conventional plotting methods
Hmm.
really does help with that because it basically labels the instinctive things that your brain already does. And
Hmm.
so for me, I'm like, oh, well, I already had the inciting incident because I knew that this big thing was going to happen. So I just put a label on it. But in the middle, it helps a lot because it gives structure to this like nebulous like void of what do I have my characters do, because it was really exciting at first and I know it's going to be really exciting in the end, but right now it's kind of boring. And so it can give you some of those conventions. Now, to say that, it could be something where you read it. You don't have to plot like that, but it might give you some ideas, that type of thing. So just like figure out some of those things, study up on them a little bit, just know enough to be dangerous so that you're not finding yourself floundering with like, I don't actually know what I'm doing. And it also sets you up, especially a point of view, because it is a little complicated to understand initially. If you can understand just what the conventions are behind point of view, in the past, especially in the 90s and probably before, there was a lot of authors who wrote in, I mean, I don't even know, I guess it's, I mean, they, what we would call head hopping. And I know we're getting a little deep here, but there was a lot of people who would, in the same chapter, it might have started in one person's, following one person. And then in a paragraph, it switches to something another character would only know, and not your main character. And you're just like, wait, what's happening? But it worked, and it worked. But now the conventions are much different, and it's much more what we would call deep point of view. I know these are all things you don't need to know, but you can research them as you come to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that meant that when you're in a character's perspective, it's like you're seeing through their eyes, and that is all that you can write. You can't write someone else's like thoughts because that character wouldn't know them. So that's a long explanation, but researching things like that just up front, just enough to know to be dangerous, you're going to probably mess them up as you write. That's totally fine, but just keep that in mind. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I will say, and this goes with our second, like, what you should do. Don't let yourself get bogged down with having to
Mm-hmm.
know how to do everything perfectly when you start. Because the main thing that you have to do
Mm-hmm.
is
Our number 2 point.
our number 2 point, start writing.
Yes. Oh, I mean, the thing is we put those things up front only for the sake of like, those are some good things that you can dive into to the depth that you're comfortable with. And
Yes.
then you just
Well,
need to move past it and start writing.
and I'm what, 6 to 8 books in. I'm not gonna do. Never mind.
Yeah.
I'm like 6 to 8 books in. I'm still learning. I am still picking up books on plot. I'm still picking up books on deep point of view. So what I'm saying is you can always learn. This isn't a like you have to know everything up front because that's just impossible. There's a lot
But
of information.
and some people might want a little bit of that direction too, which is why we do put this up front, is just that like it may be in the case of my mom, which I think she's going to know these things because we've talked about it a lot, me being a writer all the time. But those like little like what we could call them like signposts or something. You kind of like you walk to the signpost like a video game, and you like kind of just do a little thing, and then you move on to the next one. You move on to the next one. But the real thing is when you go through the banner or under the banner, and it says "Begin your book here." And really, with this, there's no special There's no special thing here. It's just starting the book, or starting the short story.
Yeah,
Honestly, I would recommend starting with, I didn't do this personally, but
I
I
didn't
do
either.
recommend it to most people to start by writing short stories because you can easily finish them. You can easily
Yes.
reach the end, and kind of get that sense of accomplishment in a
Yeah.
sense.
Yes, definitely, definitely, 100%. So what else do we have to do other than start writing?
Well, definitely read a lot in your genre, to understand
Yeah.
like the conventions like we were talking about. But
I always say read in your genre, read out of your genre, read great books, read terrible books. Like just read widely and read a lot because you're gonna start picking up on those plot things. You're on the bad books. You're gonna see what doesn't work, what you don't want to do, how not to do plot. On the great books, you can learn. You can always learn from them. So that's why I'm just like read a lot. Don't
yeah.
just don't feel like you always have to stick to one genre. So
And then number 4 might seem obvious, but finish the story. So
yes,
whether that's a book, whether that's a short story, now, and because I speak to teens quite often about writing, I will put this here. Just because you write a story and begin with it does not mean you have to finish every story, especially when you're younger, because that's part of the fun is like starting new stories. And so, testing out those genres, testing out new conventions, testing out a new story idea. I
I
think that's totally fine.
I literally have an entire file box from my teen years of books that I have started, character sketches that I have sketched out. It's like it's massive, and my poor husband has moved it every single time we have moved,
I
and it's
love
in the
it.
garage somewhere. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's fun.
So like, yeah, let yourself experiment. So don't feel bad if you're like, well, I just couldn't finish this story. But there will come a point when you will need to get to the end.
Yes, yes. Well, and I see it too as throwing a bunch of sand in the sandbox, right? You're just practicing and but eventually you're going to have to build that sandcastle and you're going to have to finish that sandcastle. So, think of all of this like practice stuff. It's not going to waste it. You're learning
Yeah.
something. You're growing as a writer. You're discovering your voice. But yes, you do have to finish.
And that is hard. Honestly, I think that to me, and I shared this as well, was that I think that finishing a novel, especially, is one of the hardest, maybe the hardest part of writing, is just
Yeah.
getting to the end. Um,
Amen.
and then past that, it's writing the next book and getting to the end of that one too. But we're not there yet. So, what happens after you finish writing the end of your novel?
Well, it would be smart to let it sit for a couple of weeks, but then you're going to have to do something called editing. And I have a really great book on self editing. I'll link it in the show notes because I can't exactly remember the title. But in one of my like TikTok doom scrolls, I stumbled across this author, and I'm going to have to find this reel because I'm pretty sure I saved it so that I can give her credit. But she said one thing that she does with self editing that she's never heard anybody else talk about is she will go on like Goodreads and she will get her comp titles from like the past 3 years, and she will go and she will not look at the 5-star reviews, not look at the 1-star reviews, but she will look at the 3-star reviews, the ones that are just kind of meh, and she will see what they're really honing in on. Is it like, do they say stuff like the ending was great, really glad that I pushed through, which means, okay, there might be a pacing issue there. So make sure that you don't have a pacing issue. And this will be books that are in your genre and books that have been published in like the past 3 years. So they're kind of recent. But you can kind of see the things that, and you don't have to read like a ton, but I mean, you'll see the things that people have issues with. And it's not like, I didn't like this character, or, this book is my favorite ever, the end, no notes. Like, those aren't going to be helpful for you. But the ones that kind of have that, like, okay, these were like, it was a good book, but these were my issues, you can learn from those.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I do think like moving into point 6, which kind of comes along with this, with your self-editing, is to connect with other writers, whether that's online or in person or both. And then find people who have read what you've written and see if they can become your readers. Now, this is this is a hard part, because you don't just want anyone to read your book and give you feedback, because not everyone's feedback is going to be beneficial for you. But it is always helpful to have a few other sets of eyes, whether
Yes.
they be readers. I would like to do a combination of readers and writers, because writers understand the conventions. They understand what you're trying to do, or what you should be trying to do, especially if they're a little ahead of you on the writing journey. So maybe they've written a few books and you've only written one or something like that. But then also finding ones that or finding people who understand what it is that you're trying to do and can be kind but also constructive. And that is a very sweet spot to hit.
Yes, and I will say too, I mean, connecting with other writers, I think this is so important, because I feel like I wouldn't be where I'm at today in my author journey if I hadn't connected with Emilie, and Natalie and Stephanie. That's kind of our writers group. But and that being said, all four of us live in different states, in different time zones. At one point, we were stretched across 4 different time zones. So this does not have to be an in-person thing. I remember during the 2020 shutdowns, we were literally once a week, we would be on a Zoom call and we would just be talking. And whether that was about life stuff, whether that was about I'm stuck in this plot, or I don't know where to go next, I don't know what to write next. It's just writers understand you on a level that other people won't. And I'm not saying that spouses and family members cannot be understanding, because, I mean, my husband is not a reader. He does not like books. And yet, he supports me 100%.
Same with my husband.
And so writers will be able, like, when you come to them and you're complaining about a certain aspect of the writing life, they're going to get it. They're going to get it on a level that, while supportive, your spouses, your family members, your friends probably wouldn't. So, and then that is going to move us into our 7th point, which is once you started writing all these things, you finish the book, now you have to decide what you're going to do with the book. Not every book you write, you're going to be like, I'm going to publish this now. Maybe it's just for you. Maybe you just wrote the book for you, and that is completely fine. But start the next one.
Yeah, and that's one of the hard things is that, and I often advise people not to cherish their first books too closely. Now, sometimes what happens is, like, someone just really feels like this is maybe the only book that I ever want to write, and this is the story of my heart. I totally get that, support that, write that book, edit that book, do what you need to do in order to get it out, making sure that it's like good quality and everything. But in the case of maybe a younger author or a newer writer who wants to see a longer career in the industry, it might be advisable to move on to the next book, because that's my famous saying, write the next book, and to see, where have you grown? What have you learned through that process of writing your first book, editing, self-editing, getting readers' feedback and things like that. All of those things are going to make you a much better writer for the next book and the next book, etc. So it's just kind of, your readers will tell you too. I think there are some people I've heard of, probably people that we know, authors that we know, who had just been sitting on that story, but when they wrote it, it came out beautifully. And that was a story they needed to tell. And that's the story that they sold. So that does happen. It's just not all the time.
I will say one of the most annoying pieces of advice that I always got, and I still get this advice, was your first book is like your throwaway book. Like, don't plan on getting that one published. Plan on just like writing it. And like you said, it is true in some cases. In some cases, we need to write the book to get it out, to finish something, to find our voice.
A process,
A process, yes, but then move on. And don't worry if your process for your first book is not the same process as your second book, because, like, I'm pretty sure I have lamented on the podcast before, my process changes with every book. I do not know why. I'm like, brain, get it together. We're doing this for the long haul, and I can't keep overhauling my process every single book. But apparently it's like, oh, yes, you can. Watch. So
I don't know. For me, I think it helped being a ghostwriter. I got so many books out and finished.
Yeah.
But it helped me personally as a writer to be able to hone in on my process so that I know when I start a next book, this is what I do for
Yeah.
that book, and this is what has set me up for success. Now, that is a personal thing. I'm not saying like,
Yeah.
if you do what I do, it will work for you, because it won't work for
Well,
everybody.
and I mean, I guess my general process is the same way. It's just kind of like the way that the writing is done is a little bit different. Some books I write on Scrivener, and some books, if I try to write on Scrivener, my brain breaks. And so that process, like the nitty gritty, some I can write in the morning. Some, if I try to write in the morning, my brain is like, you're insane. Go back to bed. This is not happening. And I can only write it at night. So,
Yeah. So
yeah.
as a brief overview, we will just remind you to start off with doing just a smidgen of research. Look into reading a few books on writing that are recommended either by us or maybe by other writing organizations. Don't go crazy. Just read a few things to get your mindset in the right area so you kind of understand at least, where do I start? And then start writing that book. Read a lot while you're writing it. And sometimes I found personally, I like to read something that's not in the genre that I'm writing sometimes, and sometimes I do. It just depends. Some authors are very religious about that. They will not read anything in their genre until they're done writing. It just depends. So then finish the book, get that book done. Try your hand at working at self-edits to, see what you can do to refine your own writing first, and then connect. And you can connect with these other writers in this whole process. We would probably advise that. We just put it at 6 because at this point, once you've connected with those people, they can hopefully step into that process with you and look over your writing. And then number 7 is just decide what you want to do with that book. Was it helpful for you to learn the process that works or maybe works for you? Or was it more of, no, this was the book of my heart and I need to get it into print? And then those steps after that, it's kind of like you hit this path and you can go multiple different ways. And then we would just say rinse and repeat. Do it again and again and again.
Yep. Yes. And as a reminder, we'll have all of these points and then links to some of our favorite resources for these different points over on our Substack. So I'm sure on the YouTube we'll link our Substack in the comments below.
Speaking of YouTube, if you're watching us there, we would love it if you would subscribe and leave us a comment. And feel free to share this, especially with other writers or maybe other friends of yours who want to be writers or who are just starting out. We think this could be really helpful for them. Do you have a pub tip for us? I forgot for us to get that going beforehand.
Okay, so a pub tip, and this kind of goes along with what we're talking about. And Emily and I have probably said this multiple times, but if you are planning on making writing any kind of career, whether that's like a hobby career or like a career, this is how you're going to put bread on the table, start your platforms now. Now is the time to start when you're working on the book, not when you have the publishing deal, not when, the book is coming out next month, I guess I should start my platform. Start it now.
Yeah, and bring in your readers, your future readers with you. I hate to even say this, but unfortunately in our current atmosphere with AI like running rampant, it's really important to show like we're the ones doing the work. We're the ones putting those words on the page using our little fingers, So bring in your readers along with that process. It's a great way to connect with other writers as well. I know I've connected with many writers on Instagram because of that. And speaking of, one of them has given us a listener question, which we can get to in a second.
Okay, well, and before, I wanted to speak into that before we got to our listener questions. But another thing, what happens is when you bring your readers behind on the entire process, they are now invested in the book, in the story, in like the journey. And so when that book comes out, they're going to be the first people in line. I know a writer who does this really, really well. I don't even know if I like her books, but by golly, I buy her books every single time because I remember when she was pitching. I remember when she got the book deal. I was there when she was, drafting and then the editing process. And so I have been with her the entire time. And I want to get that book. I don't even know if I'm going to like it, but I mean, it sounds great.
But I'm there.
And I'm there. I've been there from the beginning. So why not just at the end? So I'm sure I'll like it. I'm sure I'll like it. But yeah.
So we have a question from Janie on Instagram, and she is kind of a twofold thing. She asks, do you ever fear the blank page, which is very appropriate knowing our previous name of the podcast. And if so, how do you deal with that? And I think that actually fits really well with this whole topic.
Yeah, it really does.
What about you, Kristen?
I don't think I fear the blank page. I think I look at the blank page as more of I'm excited because there's so many possibilities of what to do with that blank page. I think where my fear starts coming into play is when I'm on that deadline and I still have too many blank pages and not enough time. But yeah, no. In general, I don't feel like I fear the blank page. What about you?
Yeah, I don't either. I actually get excited at the blank page because to me, the start of a story is probably my favorite part most of the time. There are some stories that you have to write because you're either contracted or something's happening and you're kind of like, well, I'm not as excited, but I still love to write, so it's good. I think for me, where my fear comes in, and this has changed now that I have a trilogy out and completed, my fear comes in wondering, will this be good enough for, like, to follow up on the heels of a series that I've already put out? Is my heart invested in this story as much as it was in my first series? And especially with what I'm writing right now, while I am loving this story, I don't feel as connected to it as I did with Suspended in the Stars. So to me, that does cause some fear. But what I keep telling myself, and I feel like you've told yourself this too with books you're working on, but is that, you can write whatever, but it has to get written and then you can make it better.
I will say this. If you are afraid of the blank page, open up your document and at the top, start writing. Emilie and Christen says that I can write this book, and I believe that I can write this book because they told me I could write this book. So now I'm going to start the story. Now you don't have a blank page, and you just got to keep going with your story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you do have fear and you're wondering how to conquer that, reach out to us. Connect with us on Instagram at the margins writing, or on our Substack, maybe also on our Substack. We have articles that go out. We have show notes that are posted. We also are doing our writer's logs, which can hopefully be a little informative to people and kind of see like how we process through what our weeks look like. Sometimes better than others.
You can also join us on our Discord channel, which is a little bit more intimate. We're there. You can ask questions. There's other writers there. So you are never alone. We do writing sprints over there. So if you're like, I don't want to do this alone.
And I think the link to that is in our Substack. If not, it will be. And it will be linked in our Instagram as well.
Yes. And I mean, if you can't find it, just reach out to us. Like, we love getting direct messages. We love getting comments on posts. We love encouraging you guys and helping you like get over your maybe fear of your blank page. It's our favorite. So
Absolutely. So we will see you guys here next week.
Can't wait. Bye.